Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Writers Chat. We are so glad to have you with us today. My name is Johnny Alexander. I'm here with my co-hosts, Brandy Bro and Melissa Stroh, and also with our very special guest, Jane Kalmes. Jane is the author of the Kitty Callahan Mysteries set in Jazz Age Chicago. She's also the voice behind YouTube's largest repository of mystery writing know-how. On her eponymous channel, she breaks down plot twists, motives, mystery structure, and more. I am very excited to have Jane with us. I had written, I was thinking this morning, like 7 cozy mysteries in the past. And then I was like offered a contract to write a couple more. And for whatever reason, my mind was a total blank. It's like I had no idea where to start, what to do. It was as if I had never written a cozy mystery before in my life. So I went to the internet. How do I write a cozy mystery? And Jane's videos popped up. And I spent several days watching Jane's videos, one after the other, and taking lots of notes, and really then using what she presented, because she goes so deep and it's so cool and objective, that I was able to come up with a story idea, come up with clues, come up with suspects. So she helped me get started back on that cozy mystery train that I had just totally gotten off of it and didn't know how to get back on again. So Jane, we're going to turn it over to you. We are so happy to have you with us to talk about writing mysteries.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Johnny. And I am super excited to be here and talk to all of your people here with serious writers. I have been looking forward to this all week. So I have a little bit of a presentation, and I'm just going to share my screen here. And
yeah.
All right. And then I need to, there we go. Okay. All right. So, hey, everybody. I am so happy to be here today, and I'm going to begin by just telling you a little bit about myself. My name is Jane Kalmes, and I write the Kitty Callahan series, a series of mysteries set in Jazz Age Chicago, where my sleuth is the secretary for a hard-boiled detective. And when I'm not writing, I like to spend my time making YouTube videos that really get into the nitty-gritty of mystery writing. So my channel is a nuts and bolts channel where I'm not just going to tell you what needs to be done to produce a great mystery, but rather I'm going to give you actionable steps that help you actually understand how to do it. We get very, very technical, very, very granular, and I try to bring some clarity to the whole subject of mystery writing and how to put together a spectacular novel. And I do want to mention that while my content is tailored to mystery writers, it is actually applicable to a wide variety of novelists, because every novel, of course, has some element of mystery, right? Something the protagonist needs to figure out, some villain whose motive needs to be comprehensible and primal, some twist that we need to set up for the reader so that it comes as a big surprise that nevertheless makes perfect sense. And this talk today is going to touch on each of these topics. So one of the questions that I get from time to time on my channel is, how do you tell a mystery story with meaning? Are mysteries just about solving a puzzle so that you can, or can you tell a story that is going to resonate in people's hearts and carry a moral message that can uplift or convict or challenge people? And to me, this question just never fails to surprise me, because I think mysteries, they are purely built for meaning. What mysteries are about at bottom is justice. There are various fictional genres that fulfill different human needs, different things that we crave. For example, the romance genre fulfills our human desire for love, and mysteries, they are about that human desire for justice. We want to see the good guys triumph, and we want to see the bad guys get theirs. We want to see that might does not always make right, and that there is a moral order to the world, which can be understood and which can be defended. And because mysteries are about justice, they are also about sin. They are about the consequences of sin. They are about its deep echoes across time, and about the ripples that sin creates within a community. And because mysteries are about justice, they are also about punishment, and they are about mercy. and they are about the limits of justice that we can achieve on this mortal plane. We will never be able to set everything to rights. So let's get into a mystery that is as old as time, which is, why do we sin? Why do we keep doing bad things? We're going to explore the 4 primal motives behind every mystery novel you'll ever read. And really, these 4 primal motives don't fuel just the crimes in mysteries, but any crime your villain might be committing, no matter what genre you're working in. So I know that I'm talking to a Christian group of writers, and I figured that some of you may be familiar with a book called Cold Case Christianity by J. Warner Wallace. This is an amazing apologetics book in which Wallace applies his experience as a homicide detective to investigate the evidence for Christ's resurrection. And in this book, Wallace says that anytime a crime is committed, he knows that the motive for it, the cause of that crime, is going to be one of these 3 things: money, sex, or power. So I'm going to modify this just a little bit for the cozy mystery market. I'm going to say money, love, and power, because, well, cozies tend to keep it clean, and that's where I'm comfortable too, I guess. And then I'm going to add a motive that is very, very important to mystery novels, and that's fear. So we're going to say that all mysteries are going to have a motive that is rooted in money, love, power, or fear. And we're going to look at the different ways that these 4 motives play out in mystery novels. So let's start with money murders. Okay, money is the most common motive in a mystery, and one of the reasons for that is really that there are just so many different types of assets that your villain can be trying to get. There are also so many ways that assets can be hidden, so many ways that assets can be acquired, that it's very easy to write a slew of mysteries based on the same primal motive and have them feel dramatically distinct from one another. Even if we were to just vary that valuable asset that your villain is trying to get, we begin to twist the flavor of the book in any number of different directions. For example, let's say you were writing a mystery where your villain is trying to get his hands on a family fortune, or a famous painting by Rembrandt, or the formula for a wonder drug that will cure cancer. Well, each of these are essentially money crimes, crimes undertaken to enrich the villain. But they all have kind of a different feel to them. When you start to imagine settings and scenes for these novels, you're already spinning off in different directions. So I'm going to give you a very simple, very fun exercise to help you brainstorm mysteries based on the money motive. And it's not going to take a lot of time, but it is going to be very fruitful and often lead you to some ideas that genuinely surprise you. To start, you want to come up with a list of different kinds of assets. And that's what we've already got here: a family fortune, a Rembrandt, and a wonder drug formula. The next thing you do is come up with 2 or 3 ways that your villain might try to acquire each asset. Well, for the fortune, he might try to acquire that through inheritance or perhaps through embezzlement. For the Rembrandt, replacing it with a forgery is an option, and so is stealing it during transport. And for that wonder drug formula, well, some options would be corporate espionage and computer hacking. And you can see that, again, the flavor of these books is diverging. We're already getting into plots that feel very distinct from one another just by creating these 2 simple lists. And then the final step of the process, you're going to come up with a list of obstacles that might stand in the way of that acquisition. Frequently, this obstacle will be a person who needs to be murdered in order for the villain to get what he wants. So let's choose just one example from our list here and work through that. Let's talk about obstacles to stealing that Rembrandt during transport. Well, one potential obstacle might be that the case carrying the Rembrandt is actually handcuffed to a guard. In order to get his hands on the painting, your villain might have to kill the guard. But we might have a more fun plot if what we need to do is actually unlock those handcuffs and replace the case while the guard is distracted. This could be kind of a fun caper plot, maybe the one that takes place aboard a train or an airplane. Or another obstacle might be that you don't know which train the Rembrandt will be traveling on. You need to find out by extorting the information from a lowly museum assistant and then killing him. This would be a plot that would likely begin with the death of the museum assistant, and only at the midpoint would we realize the villain's true goal, stealing that Rembrandt. Or maybe the obstacle could be that the Rembrandt you think you're stealing is, in fact, a forgery already, and you need to track down the forger and find out where the original actually is. And I imagine this as kind of a far-ranging plot that begins with the theft of the false Rembrandt, then moves on to our sleuth discovering that the thieves have abandoned their treasure because they've realized it's phony. Then this plot could move into an exciting treasure hunt where both the villains and the sleuth are trying to figure out what happened to the original and get to it first. And this is a plot that is just purely crying out for some sort of treasure map, some wickedly confusing clue that tells us where we can find the painting. So that is my exercise for coming up with money murders. And I hope you can see how just creating these 3 simple lists, assets, methods of acquisition, and obstacles, can spin you off in wild and exciting directions. All right, next, let's talk about love murders. Love murders are just murders committed to allow the villain to be with a particular person, or perhaps to punish that person for not wanting to be with them. So let's set up a little love triangle here. Let's say that we have John and Mary, who are a nice married couple in their 40s, and things are going great until they hire a new secretary, Annabelle. And before you know it, John and Annabelle are having an affair. Well, now we have a situation that is simply set up for a love murder. Okay, but who's going to murder who? Well, any of these characters might murder any of the others. Either John or Mary might murder Annabelle in order to protect their existing relationship. Maybe Mary finds out about the affair and decides that Annabelle has to go. Or maybe Annabelle is putting a little pressure on John to leave his marriage, and he decides it would be much easier to just end Annabelle instead. Or what about Mary? Well, either John or Annabelle could decide to kill Mary in order to clear the way for a new relationship. Maybe John really wants to be with Annabelle, but a divorce would be awfully costly and a little love murder would be much more affordable. Or maybe Annabelle knows that John is never really going to leave his wife, but if Mary were out of the way, well, then who is he going to go to for comfort? This is our second type of love murder, a murder undertaken to clear the way so a new relationship can form. And I do want to mention that the person who is killed doesn't necessarily have to be a partner. It could be that in order to marry his sweetheart, your villain has to kill her overbearing father who would never consent to the marriage. Or perhaps your villain wants to kill her boyfriend's uncle so that he'll inherit a fortune and finally have the money he needs to wed her. Lastly, either of our ladies might decide to murder John out of frustrated love. Maybe Mary finds out about the affair and in a rage, she clocks John over the head with the nearest heavy object. Or maybe Annabelle realizes she's never meant much to John at all. He's not going to leave Mary, and she kills him in a fit of jealousy. Okay, these are the 3 main crimes you'll see when it comes to love murders: crimes to protect an existing relationship, crimes to establish a new relationship, and crimes of frustrated love. Okay, but love murders do not always have to deal with romantic love. Parental love is a possibility as well. A non-custodial parent might kill the custodial parent in order to be reunited with their child, or perhaps it would be more convenient for them just to frame the custodial parent for murder by killing somebody else. And if you were writing a children's mystery, well, love could actually even be the love of friendship. A child in a middle grade mystery might commit a crime, not a murder, of course, but usually a theft, an act of cheating or sabotage, in order to sideline that new girl who is moving in on her best friend. All right, now let's talk about power murders. Okay, this quadrant of our motive matrix, this has a lot of variety in it. There's a lot of different ways that people seek to seize or exercise power. These can be straightforward murders committed to gain political power or to gain power within a family or within an organization, perhaps by offing the guy who's currently at the top. Crimes committed to advance a particular political agenda are also power crimes. So all of those, pardon me. So all of those spy thrillers that you see on bookstore shelves, these are about people committing power crimes to try and advance their nation's interests. And I know some of you are wondering, okay, what about the motive of revenge? Well, revenge is also a power murder. It's about exerting power over a particular person. You see, long ago, the victim hurt the villain in some way and made her feel powerless. So now she commits a power murder to show him once and for all who has power over who. Lastly, hate crimes are also power murders. In the case of a hate crime, somebody is typically committing a crime not to hold power over a particular person because of their individual identity, but to hold power over that person as a representative of a hated demographic. So in the late 1800s, Jack the Ripper committed several murders of working girls in Whitechapel, and those are power murders, murders committed to feel power over a particular demographic. In this case, prostitutes or perhaps women in general. The power murder quadrant contains the darkest crimes you'll see, and that's because some of our villains in this area desire something genuinely bad. Okay, when somebody's committing a murder for love or money, the thing they desire, their actual goal, is a positive good. Love is a good thing, and it's right for your villain to value it. The murder is just a necessary end toward that good goal. And while it's wrong for him to value love over another person's life, the goal in and of itself is still a positive. However, with power murders committed out of hatred or a desire for revenge, the villain's ultimate goal is actually a moral negative. He doesn't just want to kill the victim, he wants the victim to experience being killed. He desires the pain and anguish that comes with this crime, and it's one of the darkest motivations that stalks the human heart. All right, at last we get to talk about fear. Fear murders can be committed to protect against a specific physical threat to the villain. Maybe the villain kills an abusive parent or a bully or a threatening loan shark. But when I think about fear crimes in the mystery genre, I'm really thinking about the fear of exposure. I'm thinking about a villain who committed another crime, perhaps long ago, and somebody has found out about it. So now they need to commit a fear crime in order to make sure that their older sins stay buried. So let's change course for a minute and talk about the word Whydunit. Okay, this is the name of the talk I'm giving right now, and it's also kind of a guiding principle that I try to apply when I begin plotting a new mystery novel. And what I mean by that is two things. I mean, the plot must be rooted in one of these deep primal motives that we've talked about: money, love, power, or fear, so that my readers can understand some of the why behind human crimes. But I also mean that in most cases, the villain's motive should come as a surprise to my reader. And let's talk about why this is. Okay, let's say that you've written a mystery in which Lord Everley is murdered, and we spend the entire novel detailing all of his heirs' possible motives for the crime. His wife, Lady Everley, wants his money, and so do his sons and daughter. Finally, the climax of your novel arrives, the drawing room scene, where your sleuth gathers all suspects, goes over the evidence with them clue by clue, and finally whirls around and points his finger at one of them. And if the person he points his finger at is someone who has long been suspected, whose motive is clearly understood, and who the reader can immediately accept as a logical perpetrator of the crime, well, that ending is going to feel a little disappointing. It's going to feel a little bit flat. When your sleuth points out that the killer is Lady Everley, the reader's reaction should never be, sure, Lady Everley makes sense to me. The reader should say, Lady Everley? Her? We want that instant of shock. Now, just a minute later, the second thought that comes into your reader's head should be, Lady Everley, of course. And that's because your sleuth is going to be helping your reader to assemble all those little clues, all those little puzzle pieces that you've already put inside her brain that paint a picture of Lady Everley's guilt. That means that while Lady Everley is an unexpected candidate for the murder, nevertheless, once we have the final piece of the puzzle, it makes perfect sense. And there's a quote from Aristotle that I always like to talk about here. He said that a great ending should be surprising yet inevitable. Well, surprising yet inevitable is without a doubt a great mark to shoot for, but in most plot twists, we can actually lower the bar just a little bit. We're going to say that a good plot twist should be surprising and supportive. Okay, the support that plot twists need comes from clues, and the surprise, well, that often comes from disqualifying certain characters as suspects in the reader's mind. We want to find a way to subtly say to the reader that Lady Everley can't be the killer, so that when it turns out that she is, it comes as a big shock. And one of the ways we often disqualify characters as the villain is it's explicitly exquisitely subtle and exquisitely simple. We do it by explicitly qualifying other characters and drawing the reader's attention to them. So let's look at an example of just how to do this using an episode of Remington Steele called Hearts of Steel. And this, by the way, is exactly what I do on my YouTube channel. I explain mystery principles and give you examples of real mystery plots that use those principles so you can see how they work to deliver a great experience to the audience. In Hearts of Steel, several attempts are made on the life of divorce attorney Malcolm Markow. There are plenty of potential villains who may want him dead, but the people with the most obvious motives are the 4 women whose husbands he is currently representing in divorce proceedings. Each of these women will profit mightily if their husband's case can be sabotaged, perhaps by taking out his ace lawyer. The sleuths investigate each woman, but no matter how they try, they can't pin the crime on any of them, until finally they realize that the actual villain is Malcolm's wife, Loretta. Loretta wants a divorce, but knows she'll never get a good settlement against a crackerjack attorney like Malcolm. So she tries to commit a money murder so that she can wind up with all the marital assets. This is what I call the guilty group twist. It's a twist in which we lead the reader to the belief that the villain must come from a particular group, but in fact, they come from outside that group. And you can see exactly what the writers did to set this up. They essentially drew a big red circle around the 5 divorcees, explicitly qualifying them as suspects while implicitly disqualifying other characters like Loretta. Okay, big red circles just like this one. How do we draw them? What do we draw them with? Well, we draw them with logic. In Hearts of Steel, the writers use the logic of motive to draw their circle. They led the audience to the assumption that the motive must be to sabotage a divorce proceeding, then use that motive to draw the circle around their qualified suspects. And this is a whydunit, a crime in which the villain's motive is concealed until we're ready to reveal his identity. But the logic of motive isn't the only thing we can use to draw this circle. We could just as easily use the logic of opportunity. Let's say we've got a mystery that is taking place on a wooded island where a number of well-to-do gentlemen are set to gather for an archery contest. The first night before all the guests have even arrived, strange things begin happening to Lord Covington, the island's owner and the patron of the contest. He becomes gravely ill that evening after dinner, and it seems as though poison must be the culprit. Later the next day, he's almost crushed by a falling rock, but the archery tournament is important to him, and he insists on going ahead with it as more and more of his fancy friends come to join the festivities. At the midpoint, Lord Covington is found dead, skewered through the heart with a bolt from a crossbow. At this point, it would be very natural for the audience to assume that only the people who were on the island when the first attempt on Covington's life occurred can possibly be the villain. And by having our sleuth concentrate on those characters, we can essentially draw that big red circle around them. These are the characters who are explicitly qualified, and everyone else is implicitly disqualified as a potential villain. But what are some ways, that we could violate this belief? Well, it could be that one of the people who seemed to arrive after Covington's poison was actually here earlier, concealed on the island. Or it could be that that first attack was not committed by our eventual villain. What if someone else poisoned Covington at dinner, perhaps non-fatally, just with the intention of getting him sent to bed so that they could do a little snooping in his private study looking for cash? Well, our villain is a late arrival to the island, but he's figured out the other person's plan and realizes he can piggyback on that crime to eliminate Covington while entirely avoiding suspicion. We could also use the logic of means. We might say that since the Duke was shot with an arrow, the villain must be one of the characters who is known to have this skill, the men who arrived for the archery competition. But what if one of their wives has trained herself up in archery on the sly? Since no one thinks she's a crack shot, no one will suspect her until your sleuth puts the whole picture of her guilt together. And we could use the logic of group membership. Let's say that a ring bearing the crest of the Covington family is found at the site from which the arrow was fired. Well, then we might assume that the villain is a Covington, but it could turn out to be someone else with a reason to have that ring on his person. Maybe someone who had robbed a Covington, or perhaps someone who had recently become secretly engaged to marry into the family. Okay, in each of these examples we've talked about, what we did is give the reader a belief and then turn right around and violate that belief. And this is actually my definition of a plot twist. A plot twist is something the reader believes that turns out to be false. Now, we're going to be branching outside the mystery genre just for a bit and talking about plot twists more broadly to see how this works. In Star Wars, we believe that Darth Vader killed Luke's father. This is false. Darth Vader is Luke's father. In Planet of the Apes, we believe that the astronaut played by Charlton Heston has landed on an alien planet. Well, this is false. He has landed on Earth many centuries after he left it. And in The Sixth Sense, we believe that the protagonist, Dr. Malcolm Crowe, is alive. And that, of course, is false. Malcolm is a ghost. Okay, I've read a lot of different definitions of plot twist, but this is the one. A plot twist is something the reader believes that turns out to be false. This is the one I like best because I feel like it's most useful from a writer's point of view. It's the definition that actually helps you get started. Because if a plot twist is nothing more than something the reader believes that turns out to be false, you can see that your first job is just to get the reader to believe something that isn't true. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, there are 3 ways. We can use a lying character. In Star Wars, our lying character is Obi-Wan Kenobi. He tells Luke that Vader killed his father, and we like Obi-Wan. Our protagonist likes Obi-Wan. We immediately take that belief on board. We can also set up the events of the story to lead the reader to a mistaken assumption. In Planet of the Apes, we're shown NASA astronauts landing on a planet, and that planet looks very different from our own. We naturally assume the planet is an alien world. And the last way to introduce a false belief is actually just to take advantage of a belief that the reader brought with them. In The Sixth Sense, we assume Malcolm is alive because, well, we always assume that all of our characters are alive. No work needs to be done. Pardon me. No work needs to be done to get us to adopt this assumption because it's one we had before we even walked into the theater. Okay, and we use all of these methods for setting up plot twists in mysteries as well. We use a lying character every time that we have a character give false witness, plant false evidence, or tamper with existing evidence to support a new narrative. We lead the reader to mistaken assumptions all the time. That's what the writers of Hearts of Steel did, and that's what we did by using the logic of motive, means, and opportunity and group membership to qualify and disqualify some of our suspects in the case of Lord Covington's murder. And what about taking advantage of a belief that the reader brought with them? Well, we do this by violating core beliefs. There are certain core beliefs that come baked right into the mystery genre. Beliefs like the death is murder. Well, we could violate this belief. We could say that the death was in fact self-defense or perhaps an accident. There is only one villain or group of villains. Well, we could violate this. In fact, we did in the version of our plot where we decided that Covington's early poisoning had come from someone other than our actual eventual villain who killed him. The victim himself is not the villain. We could violate this. What if Covington had set up his death to look like murder for the purposes of framing somebody? The sleuth himself is not the villain, and a close corollary to this, which is that the sleuth's close confidants are not the villain. Well, we could violate this, and it always comes as a big, savage surprise. And another assumption is that the villain will be caught. Okay, this is a chancy belief to violate because you're getting close here to messing with that human desire for justice that is at the heart of the mystery genre. But I can think of a couple of books that did it, and they were absolutely brilliant. So now you have a good understanding of 2 of the basic underpinnings of mystery novels: how to create a compelling primal motive linking your villain to your victim, and how to create plot twists that surprise yet satisfy. And if you've stuck with me for this long, I just really want to take this moment to thank you and to tell you about a promo I'm running just this month of November for attendees of this webinar. I'm offering a free month of my Substack newsletter, and this is where I break down in detail all of the mystery writing elements that we've talked about in this discussion, and so much more. We talk about clues, we talk about how to create a fantastic sleuth, and we break down a number of classic plot twists, like the guilty crew, that can really transform your mystery fiction. So that link you see on the screen there will take you to my Substack. And if you use that /November at the end there, you can get a free month if you sign up now. Okay, so before I open the floor for questions, let me return for just a moment to that word whydunit and talk about why I think it's so important to dig into the mystery behind the meaning behind the mystery genre, and in fact, why I write at all. And I don't do it because I find it especially easy or especially fun. In fact, the opposite is true. Frequently, when I am working, I am anxious, uncomfortable, even unhappy. And I kind of think I'm not alone in that. But I do it because I think I have a gift for it and because I find it especially important. As a Christian writer, I'm feeling more and more of a need, more and more of a calling to speak into culture. I don't think I have to tell you that we've seen culture shift in dramatic ways over the last decade and even just over the last month. And there are, of course, a million ways that we can speak into culture. We can write nonfiction, apologetics, all manner of work. But here is the reason why I'm staking my pen on popular fiction like mysteries. It's the kind of writing that, to my mind, really meets people where they are. It just sidles up to them and says, oh so casually, hey, you want to hear a story? And we humans, I am 100% convinced that God has hardwired us for story. Storytelling is in the heart of every person on this planet, and we as writers have been given the gift of speaking into those hearts. And it is an exorbitant, it is an astonishing gift. We are all so blessed. And when we use this gift in its fullness, when we give ourselves, our perspectives, and our values honestly to our readers, well, then we can speak clarity into a broken world. And, I'm not really sure where the world goes from this moment in time. Sometimes I look around me and everything seems terribly dark. But here's one thing I am sure of. You don't get good realities without good fiction. All right. And I am all done, but I would love to hear what questions anybody may have.
All right. I love that last part that you said. And it just kind of went right out of my head about realities and fiction. You don't get, can you say that again?
Oh, yeah. I said you don't get good realities without good fiction. I mean, good
Yeah,
fiction
I love that.
Inspires, clarifies, and it just makes more real whatever perspective you're sharing with your audience.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, Catherine says we need to put that on a t-shirt. I love that. Yeah, we didn't have a lot of questions, but you just explained things so well. And I love that it's explained in such a logical way where it, instead of just trying to sit down and think, okay, what's my, what should I have happen, to be able to think, okay, think of it in these terms. First, let's think of what the motive's going to be. Where are we going with that? Then the obstacles. I just love the way you break it down that way. So it just follows this path. And I'm really excited. I would wish I had the time to write the whole mystery about the forged painting, where he steals the forged painting and then finds out it's forged, and then we're going to go on this treasure hunt. To me, that's an exciting story with lots of twists and turns to it. So if only there was more time in this world.
I know, I had the same feeling, and I just came up with that just by working through my group of lists, and I was like, oh, this is really good. I wish I had the time for this.
Yeah, I know. So there you go, people. That one's open for anyone who wants to get hold of it.
All right, so we have a question in the chat. Leslie asked, do cozy mysteries always have to include a murder to be successful?
Well, they don't always have to include a murder. They do need to include a crime. That crime could be a kidnapping or a major theft, things like this. But it would be unusual for a series that never delves into murder to exist in the cozy mystery market. It's just not the expectation of readers that you'll be writing a series without murders in it.
Probably one exception is Guidepost as a publisher. I know that that's who I've been contracted with recently, and they don't mind if you have a murder that took took place in the past, like as a historical element, but their readers are very conservative and they don't like murder in the present either. But I agree with Jane. I think overall you usually do. And another publisher I write for regularly, lets us have murders, even though they also have a conservative audience. They don't mind the murder, and I kind of like murders too. Usually, though, they take place off stage. So that was the question I was going to ask. If you could sort of tell us a little bit about the parameters of a cozy mystery, because they are different in thrillers and in many ways.
Right, right. So cozy mysteries I think of as low distress mysteries. Like we get to cozy up with them and enjoy all of the fun of solving a puzzle, but we don't have to feel great grief or distress for our characters. So, murders often take place off stage. They're often not terribly graphic or terribly painful. It would be rare. It would be rare for a murder to be of a child or perhaps a parent with young children. We kind of keep these low distress. And many cozies actually make a explicitly unlikable victim who has committed many crimes in his past and now is paying for that in the form of revenge or some other crime that's being committed against him. So that's kind of, I would say that is the principal defining characteristic of a cozy, is that it keeps it cozy. It doesn't require the reader to experience a lot of distress while you're reading. You're never going to read in a cozy that scene where the murderer clonks the victim over the head and then the victim is trying to get out of the room and scrabbling at the locked door. That's not going to happen in a cozy. It just is more of a light murder she wrote kind of flavor.
Yeah. Also, then another thing I wanted to touch on was series, because cozy mysteries, are very known for their series. People love that, going back to the same sleuth. So if you're developing from scratch a cozy mystery series, what would be some advice for that main character, for that protagonist, and who you might set that person up to be?
Okay, yeah. So the first thing I try to think about with the sleuth is I think about giving them a unique investigative talent, something that they are just really good at. So you could think of Monk from Monk, who has his obsessive compulsive disorder that causes him to perceive details that others don't. Or you could imagine Columbo from Columbo, who has a talent for presenting himself in kind of a quiet, not very threatening way, and just asking little questions that expose the villain's broken narratives of what exactly he was doing and what exactly happened. Or you might think of Sean Spencer from Psych, who has the ability to have total recall of images and get information that way. So I think that's a really good place to start with a sleuth, is try and think, what does this guy bring to the table? Like, we know he cares about justice. We know he's brave. He's determined and resourceful, but what's his special thing? And the three categories I always think about are, it's going to be either a skill, like something he does, like maybe he's good at disguising himself, like Sherlock Holmes, or it's going to be information. It's going to be a knowledge of banking or medical knowledge or things like that. Or last, it's going to be a way of getting access to particular information that isn't available to just everybody. Perhaps again, he may have access to the rich family in town, or I think of Columbo's talent for getting little bits of information as a talent of access, getting access to info he really shouldn't have. And this can also be, when you're setting up a series, something you want to think about for your sleuth's support staff, for his allies. Often cozy mysteries will have a police detective as the love interest, not just because that is appealing, but also because he's got that law enforcement access that is really so irreplaceable. And you can create kind of a little group of characters around your sleuth that each have their own little investigative talent. Might not come up in every book, but it's there in your back pocket when you need a character to pull it out.
That's great. I was thinking of the what's her name? The Aurora Tea Garden Mysteries, which are, I think they're on Prime now. They're really fun. She's a librarian, but she's part of what's it called? A mystery club. So they try to solve old mysteries, but then someone's always getting killed or something's happening and they have to solve that mystery too. So that's really good. And so she's got that group who's interested in solving mysteries, plus a old boyfriend, no longer a boyfriend, who's on the police department, and that gives her room for new love interest. So it's kind of a cool show if you want to kind of study cozy mysteries that way. Did I miss any questions that we had? We've got some comments. Catherine says, oh, go ahead.
Oh. I was just curious about the use of red herrings in a mystery, as where you talk about having the plot twist and needing to kind of misdirect, but sometimes you also want to tease the reader to get them excited about discovering the mystery. So where's the balance?
Okay, yeah. So here's the term I use for red herrings. I call them suspect subplots. So each suspect can be thought of kind of as a subplot. The subplot begins when we first have a reason to get curious about that guy, and it continues as we accumulate clues about him, and then it ends when we dismiss him from suspicion. And the most common way to dismiss a suspect from suspicion is learning that they have a secret that is not the murder. Perhaps they were having an affair at the time the murder was committed, and so this is why they have been very cagey about their whereabouts. This is the most common way. We can also kill people to end their suspect subplots. We can also dismiss them through evidence. Yeah, there are a number of ways, but essentially a red herring is just going to be a distraction from the main plot. It's usually going to be in the form of one of those suspect subplots. And I think one of the things to keep in mind with red herrings is, sometimes with our storyline clues, our clues that actually lead to the villain, we want them to kind of fly under the radar, but not so with the clues in those suspect subplots. We want them to be noticed because they can't distract the reader if the reader doesn't notice them. So the two things that the reader is always gonna perk up on are things that are really odd and things that are synergistic. So, synergistic, if we meet a character who has a name that is very similar to a company that was involved in the crime, that's synergy. And we pick up on that and notice it very easily.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Well, do you guys want to come back on and then we can let you talk to Jane person to person, because that's always fun. Sally says when she's watching a series and they introduce a character whose actor name I actually know, she knows they're going to be a big part of the finale. Yeah, so we've become quite a sophisticated audience. I think it gets harder and harder to trick people because
it is sadly very hard to trick me these days.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a bummer.
It is hard. Tell us a little bit about your book. Why did you decide, because I usually think of cozy mysteries as being contemporary. So why did you choose the Jazz Age Chicago as your setting for your cozy mystery?
I love a lot of historical periods, so that's part of it. But really, it's just a pair of characters that popped into my head, which was my sleuth Kitty and her her cousin, Coco, who is an 8-year-old girl who has been recently orphaned, just as the first book begins. And it was just those two characters who popped into my head, and I saw Kitty wanting to protect Coco and yet having this mystery that needed to be solved. And I don't know, they've just lived there ever since. And I also thought it was really fun to kind of do this hard-boiled milieu, but with some cozy restrictions on it, with keeping the murders low distress and stuff.
Well, that's great. That's great. So many cozy mystery covers have dogs and cats on the Is that a requirement?
No, I mean, it's definitely not. I think, you know, for sure, pet mysteries, paranormal mysteries, baking mysteries, these are very,
Yeah.
very, very popular. And, you know, I think classics really play well in the cozy genre. I think there are readers out there who are like, I just want my next great pet mystery. But, you know, there's just an infinite variety of cozies out there. There are ones that are a little bit more campy and more humorous. There are ones that are a little bit more real. There's the whole gamut, and I don't have pets in my books, but yeah, I think there's just a wide variety of stuff that you can do.
Yeah, I agree. And it's really fun, and it's a very popular genre right now. It truly is. And if you can get a good series going, you know, you could probably find a publisher or even go indie with. I think a lot of cozy mysteries are indie published and they're doing pretty well. You just have to really dig down, get that wonderful sleuth that's going to take you over multiple books, and you know, it may be a way to go. Plus it's just, they're just fun to write, you know, because of the mystery part of them. So anything I'm missing, any questions or comments that we need to go? Oh, Catherine wants to see a sleuth with a pet rabbit. You know, I've not seen that. I've seen birds, but usually it's cats or dogs.
The cats or dogs can get around. They can do stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Investigation.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I also love cozies, and the thing that made me want to write cozies is that they frequently have a romance element, and I just love that. I love the mix of murder and romance, and it's just it's my perfect I don't know, it's my perfect secret sauce for what makes a really fun book to read.
Yeah, they are. And then the supporting cast can be really cool too, because they, especially in the series when they come back on, and you know, you get to see their lives as well. And so yeah, big fan. All right. Okay, anybody else? Anybody have anything they want to ask or say or comment? Hey, Pam. Yeah.
All right. I have stories I haven't finished, and now I've got ideas for something new. And I don't write mystery, and now I want to. And hey, Jane. I wrote so many notes. I've got 2 different ideas, and I'm like, thank you. This is really, really interesting. I don't know if I can do it because I cannot figure things out. My husband sees it coming a mile away. He ruins every mystery for me that we watch. But I am willing to give this a shot. I'm going to start with a short story. So,
oh, awesome. Very exciting.
Thank you.
It is exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I also tend to see the ending coming of mysteries. I was watching a mystery the other day and I was like, oh, halfway through, I'm like, victim did it. But you know, I think for like one thing I often talk about is we mystery writers, we have this horror of people guessing our ending. You know, we don't want anybody to guess the ending. And I feel like it's very easy for us to get into that emotional place because we're seeing everything. We see what the victim did, what the villain did. We see everything, and it's much less clear to the reader. And for those readers who are really, really savvy, who really can just snap their fingers and say, I know who did it, that is actually not a terrible emotional experience. Like it's nice to be surprised, but it's also kind of nice to be validated, to be like, yes, I got it, I'm good. So you know, that's something I always like to speak to, is that we don't have to be afraid of people guessing our endings. It's harder than we think, and it's actually not the worst thing. Like the worst thing is if your reader gets to the end and they're like, I don't believe it. You know, that would be a problem of not having enough clues to support your twist, to make
It needs to be satisfying.
Yes.
to everybody. It's like, I don't typically like tragedy either, but there are some stories that have no other way to end than tragedy. But if it's a satisfying, if it makes sense and you go, oh yeah, it couldn't have ended any other way, so I'm okay with it. So it's like the same thing with, if I figured it out beforehand, but I enjoyed the process getting there, then I'm okay. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah, I think totally. You know, for those savvy mystery readers who really see it all coming, I think that that can be a really good experience.
Okay, cool.
That if I'm remembering right, on one of your videos or YouTube, yeah, your YouTube videos, you talked about Whydunit, and you talked about that some today too. But that for those readers, it really is more about how it was done, not necessarily who did it, because they did pick up on that, but they're still interested. It's just like with romances, you know the guy and the gal are going to get together at the end, so you know that that's not a surprise, but it's how did they get there in that journey. So I think for some readers that's the way it is for mysteries too. And actually, when I started thinking about mysteries is how done it instead of who done it, it was a little bit easier to plot and to,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think howdunits can be great. And those I have a lot of videos on howdunits. So those would be like locked room murders, or
Mhm.
perhaps perfect alibi murders, where we just, you know, we know this guy's guilty, but we can't figure out how he managed to do it while still looking like he was at this other place.
Right.
And those can be really fun. And then there's also, you know, there's even how catchums. This would be like Columbo, where we know exactly what the villain did. And we just need to see how the sleuth is going to uncover enough evidence to prove it. Those can also be really fun mysteries.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour. So, okay, wait a minute. I just saw another. What if a neighborhood dog showed up at a lady's new house and led her to a murder? That could be the way it starts. You're right, Catherine. That would be a great beginning for a book.
Yeah, very, very cozy.
Very cozy. All right. Next week, we're going to have Victoria Durstock with us to talk about her publishing journey. Many of you know Vicki. She started out as an author. She may still be doing her own books. I'm not sure about that. But then eventually along her journey, she decided to start a publishing company called In Game Press. And I know some of you are very familiar with it. So she's going to be with us to talk about her writing journey next week. If you're watching the replay, we're so glad to have you do that. We do invite you to join us any Tuesday morning, except during the holidays. We're here at 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, and then just go around the clock to see where you are. To be here live, be part of the community. And we also invite you to join our Facebook group, Writers Chat members, or to check out the Writers Chat Facebook page, where you can see all kinds of videos going back several years. So Jane, thank you again so much for this. I've learned so much from you, and I appreciate the way you can just make it so the only word I know to use is objective, where I can be creative, but I can start out in this very objective way to put these pieces together to then let that creativity have the freedom to do what it needs to do. So it's just wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. This was just pure fun. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay. So everybody stay around for the after party, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.